somewhere in Dreamland.
It looked like the complexion of a dead person in a casket.
Random memories of waking up in the night, knowing I'm not alone in the room.
We have 3 cities that all claim to be the UFO capital of the entire world.
So when she turned on the kid's light, it stopped walking.
My parents told me these things didn't exist.
They're a little more ominous, creepy, scary, and the question is there, what is this thing?
Hovering just inches from the window was literally is what you'd imagine a grave to be.
Never seen anything like this in my life.
I'm still left with more questions than answers.
Welcome back, dreamers. If you've had an encounter, please contact me at somedreamland@gmail.com or find me on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram at Somewhere in Dreamland Podcast. If you're enjoying the show, please help it grow by subscribing, rating, reviewing, and sharing this episode with friends, family, and social media. Also, check out the new donation button on the show's main page and be on the lookout for the Dream Vault, an all-new members-only section with exclusive extra content. Tonight's show is a two-parter with guest Preston Dennett. Preston has been in the field of ufology and the paranormal for over 35 years, beginning his journey into the strange in 1986 when he discovered that his friends, family, and coworkers were having dramatic, unexplained encounters. Since then, Preston has become a MUFON Field Investigator, a ghost hunter, a paranormal researcher, and the author of over 27 books and hundreds of articles about UFOs and the paranormal. So without further ado, grab your blankets, turn down the lights, get comfy, and let's fade away into
Dreamland.
So I want to talk to you about some abductee cases and contactee cases. I want to pick your brain about that. What is the biggest common denominator in those types of cases?
Oh, the biggest common denominator. Well, I mean, there are definitely patterns in terms of like what people see, what they experience. You can, to a large extent, predict that. I mean, people are taken on board and physically examined. They describe the interior of these UFOs in very similar ways. You know, small rounded rooms, indirect lighting, this type of thing. So I would say that is a common denominator for sure. In terms of the witnesses themselves, I started looking into that because I'm like, why? Why you? Why not me? Why not them or anyone?
Right.
You know? And there are real strong common denominators there, particularly when it comes to the grays. If you are taken on board, the chances are very good that you have had encounters as a young child, and also very good that your parents have, or your grandparents, or your aunt or uncle, or someone in your family, and definitely your kids too. So what we found, and I think Bud Hopkins was among the first to really solidify this assessment or conclusion, is that this does track families. And there are many cases that go back 3, 4, 5 generations or longer. I mean, one lady I interviewed, they told her, oh, we've been following your genetic lines since biblical times.
Wow.
James Sparks, he's a contactee who's fairly well known, who has not gone under hypnosis. He doesn't need to. He's what we call a conscious abductee. ET's told him, and showed him images. Here's you in Victorian times, your family. Here you are in Roman times. Here's you as a caveman. We've been following you forever. So that is definitely a common denominator. But not everyone. Sometimes it's just a one-off. I'm like, well, it's evenly divided between men and women. I know it's not blood type. It's all races. It's, blacks, whites, Latino, Asian, Pacific Islanders, you name it. This is all over the world. We know that. It's not religion. It's not political affiliation. I'm starting to dig deep, looking for answers. And I did find a weird common denominator, which kind of shocked me, but also encouraged me in a weird way. Because I'm like, okay, what's your job? What do you do for a living? And I started to hear a lot of people who were doctors, teachers, social workers, human rights activists, inventors, police officers, artists, entertainers, this sort of thing. People who are doing good work for humanity in some capacity. Musicians. They love musicians. And I think what they're doing is they're trying to contact people and influence people who are doing good work for humanity, which I think speaks volumes about their agenda.
Yeah, for sure.
And as far as other commonalities, because I'm like, what happens? Why are people being taken? Why? What's the agenda here? And yeah, the physical examination is the thing I hear most. People are laid on a table, or often people will describe a dental chair type device. That kind of shocked me. I'm like, I keep hearing that. That's interesting to me. But people who don't have a strong fear response, people are like not screaming out of their minds and saying, stop, don't probe me, get that needle away. And their memories will be erased. They will largely remember this through just flashbacks and nightmares and regressive hypnosis, which I've, support. I think it works, but I've sort of stayed away from it because it is controversial. Most of the cases I've dealt with have been fully conscious people who remember this, as a waking experience. And what happens when someone is taken on board, if you do not have a strong fear response, is very nice. I got involved in this field. I'm like, oh, this is terrible. These bug-eyed monsters are kidnapping people against their will and doing hideous experiments on them. This is terrible. This is not good news. And I don't think that at all now. I don't think that's what's happening. Because the physical examination is the worst I hear. And I started hearing a lot of cases of people being healed, physically healed, no kidding, of cancer, of colds, flu, cuts, bruises, broken bones, kidney disease, liver disease, heart disease, serious illnesses, diphtheria, diabetes. I mean, you name it. There's a long list. I wrote a whole book about this, got some 300 cases. So that's encouraging. But after, if you don't have a strong fear response, they will not paralyze you. They will, examine you, and you get up from the table and they're like, okay, would you like to see the ship? And they will take you on a darn tour and take you to, this is what usually happens. They will take you first to like the engine room. They're like, this is how we fire a craft. Here's our engine. It's run on electromagnetism. And why are you guys using fossil fuels? There's other energy sources that won't pollute your planet. And then they take you to this little room and they have a little talk with you like, you guys are destroying your planet. You need to stop messing around with nuclear power. You must tell people to stop putting out the greed and negativity because you're going to destroy yourselves. Why are you so warlike? Why are you polluting? This is a very common thing. Over and over and over again, people are given warnings. They're told flat out, you're in for some rough times if you do not change your ways. You are destroying your environment. You're going to have hurricanes, tornadoes, earthquakes. Stop what you're doing. This is almost a rule. This is the most common message, by far, of anyone who gets any message at all beyond, don't be afraid, we won't hurt you. Which is the first words out of their mouths. Again, encouraging. And after that, it would be, I would say that people are taken to the control room, the helm, and some are sat in the chair. I'm like, you want to learn how to fly? Would you like to fly the craft? This is, in my book, Onboard UFO Encounters, which had 15 cases, 4 people had that experience. So that's not unusual. They will take you into the control room and sit you down in the chair and tell you how to fly it, and even let you fly it. So
I had interviewed Michael Allens. Have you ever heard of Michael Allens?
No, but the name does sound familiar.
He's written a couple of books called, one was Alien Revelations, and his second book was How to Build a Flying Saucer.
Oh, yeah, okay.
And he talks exactly about pretty much what you just said. And he said right to the point where this one being was kind of like a teacher being to him, and it literally taught him how to construct one of these things. And he wrote a book on it. It's pretty interesting.
Yeah, I did a whole study of cases like that. ETs teach people how to build free energy motors. People have, submitted patents to the U.S. Patent Office. This is not uncommon. Some have gotten pretty far in their, inventions. Whitley Strieber talked about this. He tried to build one. It's a thing. This is because our government has refused to release the technology, and the ETs are like, all right, you're not going to do it. We will go to the people, and we will teach them how to do it. And sooner or later, someone's going to do it. If the government doesn't get to them and, destroy their invention. But that's definitely another reason I'm like, okay, this is interesting. Maybe these aren't our enemies. Maybe this is not a threat. I don't think it is a threat. Because the next common agenda, and this is a big one, they are trying to wake us up spiritually, psychically. This is something that happens over and over again. People who have onboard encounters come back spiritually transformed. There was an electronics engineer, a Navy guy I interviewed, who was, really smart. And they showed him how to build a free energy motor, same sort of thing. But he came away from his experiences doing dowsing, of all things. Wow. And that's what he ended up making his living as after he left the Navy, and was very successful at it.
That's interesting.
Right? And what I usually hear is something along those lines. Channeling, psychic reading, astral travel, out-of-body experiences. I'm huge on that, by the way. But past life recall, healing, hands-on healing. So many people come away from their experiences feeling like they can do this. And I've talked to some of these guys and had sessions with them. One lady, she's a contactee. She's like, would you like me to do a healing on you? Run some energy through you. I'm like, sure. Are you kidding? Let's do this. And she's like, all right, take off your shoes and your socks and I'll run energy through the soles of your feet. I'm like, oh, okay. And she did. And I could feel this energy coming through her hands and running up my legs. Like, man, it felt like water going, like my legs had become hollow. And electricity was pulsing up through me. I mean, I could physically feel it. It was insane. So this is, and I went to another lady who said she felt like she had the ability to do psychic healing. And she's like, all right, lay down on the table and I'll just do this Reiki-like work. And I'm laying there and she's, waving her hands around. And I'm like, damn, I'm seeing like colored lights, pastel green and blue and pink coming out of her hands. And I kept like blinking my eyes. I'm like, huh. Finally, I turned her and I'm like, I think I'm seeing something. She's like, oh, are you seeing the lights? And I'm like, yeah. She's like, are they like, pink and stuff and green? I'm like, yeah, I'm actually seeing it. Thought I was going crazy. She's like, no, people report this all the time. And I talked to another lady. She was a telephone operator. Didn't really enjoy her career. It was kind of a dead-end job. Pat Brown is her name. She was this beautiful black lady. And abducted by Greys. She hated it. It was very scary in the beginning. Was not happy. Just got tired of the fear and said, that's it. If I'm truly being abducted, I want to go on board now. Take me on right now, you bastards. She was mad at them. And she woke up on a spaceship And they're like, we were waiting for you to, wake up and get over your fear. And they started showing her all this stuff. And they took her out of body. They showed her this band of negative energy that's surrounding our planet. This is all the fear and negativity you guys are putting out. And she came back being able to heal. She quit her job, became a massage therapist, and she's got a bunch of testimonials of people who she's healed. And they've said they've seen blue light coming out of her hands. I never had a session with her. I lost track of her. But she says when she's doing it, this is so wild, she can see the grays in her head, and they're standing in their UFO there, or sitting in front of their panels there and pulling all these knobs and levers to assist her in her healing.
Wow, that's interesting.
Yeah, I thought that was interesting. But yeah, this is why I'm like, okay, I see what these guys are doing now. They're trying to wake us up to telepathy, to levitation. That's another thing I just recently discovered. I'm like, hey, Whitley Strieber had a levitation experience, he claims. So did Stephen Greer. Because I talked to a contactee, she's like, oh, I levitated after following a UFO experience. I'm like, you mean they levitated you? And she says, no, I physically levitated. I'm like, you're kidding. Because I had already looked into human levitation and I knew it was real. I wrote a whole book about it. But I didn't realize it was connected to all of this. But it is.
Yeah, it's crazy, man. Like I when I was talking to Mike Allens after the show, we were talking a little bit about this and that, and I said, I remember when I was a kid, I had a couple of weird experiences where one of them, my parents were having a party, and they were downstairs, and we had a big house, and my younger brother was sleeping below me on a bunk bed, and I was on the top bunk, and I felt the bunk bed moving, and I looked up, and there's this creature down at the foot of my bed. It scared the living crap out of me. I mean, I screamed. I don't know what happened to it. It was not my brother, because my brother started crying as soon as I screamed. My parents came in. Everything was okay after that, but I was scared to death, And then I told him about that incident, and I also told him I remember distinctly when I was 8, 9, 10 years old, being able to make myself float. I could float all the way. I could stand and float all the way up to the ceiling if I wanted to. And I did that one time, and I got stuck and couldn't get back down. And it scared the daylights out of me. And I never tried it again after that. But I remember that, like, it really happened. It really happened.
Wow.
So,
wow.
Yeah. So Mike started asking me questions. He's like, well, have you ever noticed anything weird? Or I'm like, no, but I do have this thing on my left calf that I tease my wife all the time about. It's where my alien implant is. And he's like, what's it look like? And I said, it's a little scoop mark, and it looks like somebody just took a little spoon and scooped some out. And he's like, oh man. He goes, I don't know what to tell you, but this is what's going on. So
yeah,
I don't know.
I know what to tell you.
It's kind of that's kind of what my show is, man. I'm gonna put those pieces of the puzzle together for myself and everybody else, and that's where I'm at with it right now.
Yeah, see, I'm just not at all surprised to hear this, and I think this is happening to a lot of people. Sometimes it's hidden in amnesia, and suddenly you'll have a cue or something, like just see something that reminds you of it. But yeah, a lot of people are having this sort of thing. Particularly as kids. I can't tell you how many kids I've talked to have levitated. I call it the floating stage. It's somewhere between age 5 and 12.
Yeah, it's crazy, man. I mean, I believe that you have talked to. I believe there's a bunch of people out there that have, and I think you're spot on with your kind of like what the people. I don't know how to explain it. I think you're right on with like the common denominators and the commonalities between people. Like I'm very artistic. I can do it all. I can draw, paint, write. I'm very good with that stuff. So I think that there is a lot to that, a lot to what you said, and the commonalities between them. I think you're spot on, man.
Yeah, thanks. I took me a while to come to that conclusion, but I kept, like this lady in Norway, she contacted me because she had a very strange experience with grays, and she has no UFO history, none. I'm like, what happened? She's like, well, these grays came into my bedroom one night and started flipping me around on my bed. I'm screaming at them like, what the heck are you doing? And they wouldn't answer any of her questions. They just flipped her onto her stomach, pressed this thing against her back. She felt energy coming in, and they filed out. And she looks out the window, and they walked through the wall. And she looks out the window, there's this eerie blue light. The whole world looks different. She jumps up, goes to the window, the light, switches off, and they're gone. The experience is done. And she's like, well, that was weird. And she's like, oh, my back. She had been severely injured in an accident and hurt her back real bad. And they cured her, flat out cured her. It's one of like 15 cases I know of where people have been cured of chronic back pain or back injuries. And so I'm asking her all these questions, and I'm like, okay, what's your job? Like, well, I used to be a graphic artist. I'm like, oh, interesting. She's like, but I'm retired now, and right now what I do is, please don't use my name because I'm pretty well known in my country. I'm an animal rights activist and human rights activist. I'm like, there it is, boom. So
right there,
this is that weird pattern. Whether it's music, all these musicians are coming forward. Miley Cyrus, Demi Lovato, remember John Lennon, of course.
Yep.
It's not uncommon. Jimi Hendrix, you name it. These musicians, a lot of them are having contact.
I think that a lot of them, a lot of artists and musicians use a lot of drugs that maybe open up that extra sense that that third eye per se that allows them to see more, I think.
Yep, a lot of people have perhaps a near-death experience, and that will open them up, and that starts UFO contact. Or people will have UFO contact. This is something I've definitely found. People I'm like, hey, has anything strange happened to you? I always leave my questions pretty open-ended. And by and large, contactees describe a wide variety of paranormal experiences. They're very psychic. This can happen prior to the encounter, but just as often as a result of an encounter. They start just having clairvoyance or dreams that come true. They're very, very psychic, these contactees.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that as well, because I actually have dreams all the time that come true, like the next day or the day after. It happens. I had a dream one time that I dream about a train wreck one night, and it was crazy, man. I woke up and I told my wife about it, and everything was whatever, and didn't think about it again the rest of the day, and was coming home from work one day and sitting at a railroad crossing. The gates went down. Here comes a train, and I thought, wouldn't that be something? Right before my eyes, this train folded up and fell 30 feet into a baseball field that was below it, and I could not believe what I just saw. It was incredible. So yeah, I think you're right. I think it hits on all those different spectrums of paranormal activity too. Yeah. I have had a lot of that too myself. A lot of precognitive dreams. It's crazy when it happens because you're like watching your dream sort of play out, and the world like gets really dreamlike suddenly. You're like, oh my God, I recognize this. It's very like ultimate deja vu. Yeah, it is. It's crazy when that happens. And a lot of times it is disasters. Not always. It can be anything, some little event like a haircut or a gift or an unexpected visitor or anything.
Yeah, I saw a horse drowning and I woke up. I'm like, that's weird. Turn on the news. There's the horse drowning, even down to the name of the horse. So, yeah, definitely I've caught the bug.
So, during all your investigations and your research, have you ever come across anyone, or have you yourself ever come across any cases that involved men in black?
Yeah. I've certainly read about Men in Black. I don't have a whole lot of Men in Black cases personally, and it's a little confusing because there are Men in Black and there are government agents, right? And definitely, I would say government agents a lot more. But there is one guy I interviewed. I call him Ramon. Says, yeah, you can use my real name, but he's got a very large family. And I'm like, I don't think it's a good idea because his experiences are pretty darn extensive, and he's got a lot of people around him. So I ended up just using a pseudonym. But he had an experience as a young man. I mean, he has experiences from age 5 onwards. He's now in his mid-70s, where he's been abducted, UFOs, the whole deal. And he had experiences, I think he was like 12 years old, where the Men in Black approached him and didn't threaten him, just kind of stood there and looked at him. And those are the classic Men in Black, who are probably not human, as we would think of it at least. They look human. But in terms of government agents, oh yeah. Yeah, I've had people tell me they've had their hypnosis tapes stolen. One lady said all her abduction notes. Wow. Another guy from upstate New York was having experiences and wrote them all down, and they were stolen the next day. He called the police, and they're like, well, we can't really do anything. He's like, well, someone broke into my house and stole my stuff. What do you mean you can't do anything? And they're like, well, it was just notes. It's not anything of value. He says, well, it was valuable to me. And they wouldn't help him.
Wow.
But I'm talking with a lady right now who's full on contactee, and she shows me the pictures of these government guys who are parked out in front of her house. She moves, they come. They follow her. I actually went and visited her, and she came to the Laughlin UFO MegaCon, and she rented this little Airbnb, and I'm talking to her, and this car comes up and parks and blocks the driveway. And I'm looking at them like, who the hell are you to block the driveway? Right. I'm looking at them and they screech off. She's like, there you go. You believe me now? I'm like, well, yeah, I already believed you, but it was pretty kind of unnerving to watch it.
What branch do you think that they're part of?
NSA.
NSA?
Or a lot of this, you track it back to Navy. I don't know. I don't think there are any branch as we would think of it. These they have their own little group, like MJ12 or whatever you want to call it. These guys.
Now, what part does the ATIC play in all of this?
The Air Technical Intelligence Command, a big part. And I found this out. Early on, we know that the cases that went to Blue Book that were really meaty cases, the big ones that involve national security, bypassed Blue Book completely. And Blue Book has all these unidentified cases, and they didn't even get the good ones. They went to the Air Technical Intelligence Command at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. And they are the ones who are sort of, what I would say, organizing the study of UFO visitations on our planet, or handling it, monitoring it. I did a book, UFOs at the Drive-In, which is so crazy because I had this case from a lady at work, as it turned out, Claudia. It says, I was at the Drive-In Theater, 1971, Paramount, California, and this UFO drops down, hovers next to the screen. I'm like, wow, really? It's like, oh yeah, everyone saw it. It cleared the theater. And she doesn't remember what happened next. That kind of freaked me out. In fact, they sort of forgot about the whole thing until years later when they heard someone else describing the same incident. They were there as well on the radio. And I thought it was a one-off until I was writing UFOs over Colorado, because I had run into a few other cases, but while I was researching this book on Colorado, I ran into 3 cases in a row of UFOs hovering at drive-in theaters and showing themselves off to the entire audience. And I'm like, what's going on here? And definitely this is part of their showing off behavior. So I collected a bunch of cases. I started researching into it, and I found over 100 where they're hovering at drive-in theaters, putting on little shows.
Wow.
Seriously, this is a thing. Absolutely, it just blew me out of the water, because I've been in this field for a while, and I'm like, I had no idea. This slipped under the radar for me. And I found this very early. The first case I found took place in, gosh, where was it? It was on the East Coast, Georgia, I think it was. And the main witness was a journalist, a good witness. And it's the only reason I think this case got any publicity at all. Because often they don't get a lot. It's local newspapers. And so he reports it to the Air Force. And he's rooted to Project Blue Book, or the precursor of it. This is 1950. And it was sent directly to the Air Technical Intelligence Command, the commanding general, actually, at Wright-Patterson. Very interested in his report. And I found others, same darn thing. There was a case in Bakersfield, California, the terrorist drive-in, where an Air Force officer was watching a movie with 100 other people. This is a fairly large drive-in, probably more than 100. It can hold 600 people. Same thing, UFO dropped, hovers right over the screen like they always do. It was maybe 20 feet up, flashes its lights like they always do. They're clearly putting on a show, wanting to be noticed, and takes off. So he calls the police, and Sheriff Leroy Hatfield takes the call and says, okay, gets the report. His phone rings again. It's another person from the theater. After receiving 4 calls, he's like, all right, never mind, I'm coming down there. Goes down to the theater. There's still 100 people there talking about what they saw. And he takes the testimony of some 20 or 30 people. And they're lined up to talk to him. He's like, that's it. My arm's tired. I know what you saw. I've got it. I've got the report. I've got the information I need. Please go home. And so he submits a report to the local Air Force, which, this is Bakersfield. The closest Air Force is Edwards Air Force Base. Oof, they're neck deep in this stuff. Edwards Air Force Base. This is 1950. And it's picked up by a Blue Book officer. And here's where it gets really interesting. He writes up a report based on Sheriff Leroy Hatfield's notes. And this report, which you can find online, I found this on the web, is marked action. It's now been declassified. Marked action, and it was sent the very next day to the Air Technical Intelligence Command at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, to Ent Air Force Base in Colorado, where we track all incoming and outgoing air traffic, and get this, to the highest level of government, the Director of Intelligence in Washington, D.C.
Wow.
So, you can't tell me they're not aware of what's going on.
Right.
You just can't, because I know we know, they know we know they know.
Right.
It's crazy.
So are animal mutilations still a factor in any of these sightings or cases, or
no?
Do you know anything about that? Because I haven't heard anything about that in a while.
Yeah, that is not something that's publicized a lot, and it's controversial. And I have looked into it because I wrote, Colorado, the book on Colorado, which has been hard hit. I also wrote UFOs over New Mexico, which is the hardest hit state in terms of at least cattle mutilations. And there does seem to be a UFO connection, but I'm not entirely convinced that this is not government doing it, because ETs are not the only one interested in genetics. Government is as well. And they have a campaign to sort of put a fear slant on this subject and make the ETs look evil. And this is a very effective method of doing it. Like, look what they're doing. They're torturing cattle and mutilating all kinds of animals. I don't know, because there are some cases which seem to have a pretty strong UFO connection. But on the other hand, I've talked to some contactees who are just livid about this. Like, it's not the ETs. They would never do this. They are not the ones doing this. It's the government. I'm like, okay, don't get angry. But so I don't know. I'm not a mutilation researcher. Christopher O'Brien, he's looked a lot into it. Linda Moulton Howe and others. But certainly I've run across this, and I know it's not just cattle. I do know that cattle have large strands of DNA that are pretty much identical to humans. And for that matter, DNA doesn't vary a whole lot from creature to creature. It's just little small changes that make a creature what it is. The DNA is a big, big deal for ETs and the government. Our government is doing a lot of research into this, so I think it might be something to do with that, and honestly that they're the ones who are doing it to some extent. But yeah, that's a tough one. I am not an expert on that by any means, so it's hard for me to really speak to it with any real authority, but I've certainly looked into it and I'm following it, and I know there's been a lot of research into this. The cattle industry has been very hard hit. They're losing lots of money. They're upset. And anyone who tries to find answers gets stonewalled. And that always raises, a red flag for me. Whenever anyone's attacked or debunked or stonewalled. I'm like, why? Why is this, touching a nerve?
Yeah, I mean,
I don't know.
So, I know we touched on Eisenhower a bit. Do you think that other presidents are also aware of what's going on, or do you think they just give them enough information to make them happy, I guess?
Yeah, some only get enough to make them happy, clearly. But some are in the loop completely. George Bush Sr. was the head of the CIA, so I think he was full on in the loop.
Yeah.
And Nixon, apparently, according to his, there's a story that's circulating in the UFO community that he showed Jackie Gleason alien bodies. And this is a story which comes from Jackie Gleason's ex-wife. And apparently there's some legitimacy to it. But if you look at presidents in UFOs, all of them pretty much down the line have made some very provocative statements. Certainly Reagan did several times.
Yeah.
Jimmy Carter, he saw a UFO. He's like, I'm going to make it public. Gerald Ford, he was actually in the representative, in Congress, I believe, at the time of the Hillsdale, Michigan sightings, which were huge. And he was calling for a congressional investigation. But to a certain extent, I think they are pulled into the loop. Some more than others. Kennedy, there's some people who've researched that whole assassination story and have said flat out that's what was behind the assassination. He was planning on going public.
I heard that too.
So, yeah. I mean, Obama has made statements. Recently, he made even more statements. Clinton as well. Trump. Biden ran off stage when someone asked him, come on, just say it. Alien, it's not that hard.
Come on, man. That's how he would say, come on, man, aliens ain't real.
Yep. But I think at some point he's going to have to address the issue because now it's a political hot button thing. I mean, people are talking. This is not just one person in government. We've got Senator Mark Rubio. We've got, the guy from Nevada, Senator Reid, or former. Reid. And a lot of people are looking into this now. I'm not so sure how much power Congress has to break this issue wide open, but they sure have a platform. So these secret government folks better watch out, because if the Congress gets a hold of this and doesn't let go, and I hope they don't, this could be bad news for these cover-up folks. But
yeah, not to mention, I think that that what they've done recently with releasing the footage and that type of thing, I think we've got a whole new group of people out there, like civilians that are now interested in this that never were before.
For sure. And the UFO community is up in arms, and we are armed with evidence, and we've got the proof. There are implant removal cases. We've got landing trace cases, radar return cases, photographs. Don't tell us this isn't real, and stop talking about sightings. But ultimately, I think it's probably a mistake to turn to the liars for truth on this subject. 'Cause that's what they are. They're still lying. Look at the Condon Committee. Look at the Robertson panel. Look at Project Blue Book. They all said the same thing. Nothing to it. Pay no attention to the man behind the curtain. This is not the droid you're looking for. Go away. It's not a threat to national security. And now they've done a 180-degree turn in terms of, maybe there is something to it. We still think it might be radar return, propagation echoes or birds or balloons or foreign government. And they hardly can use the word extraterrestrial. It is in the report, but as a footnote, like maybe, just maybe, no, never mind. They can't say it. So I'm not.
Well, even the media is taking it more seriously, I've noticed. Like, they aren't laughing or joking about it as much like they used to. You always used to get the X-Files music when they'd have one of these reports, or it was always an off, tongue-in-cheek sort of story, and now they're kind of taking it more serious.
Yeah, or they bring on some goofball like Phil Klass.
Oh yeah,
and that's not happening. And I feel bad for the people are caught in the middle. These pilots. Did you see them on 60 Minutes? That was interesting.
Yeah.
Here are these pilots who are like, wow. I mean, you can hear these recordings like, look at that. And they're cursing. They're going, oh, holy, bleep, bleep, bleep. Yeah. It's really funny because they know what they're looking at. It's a craft. It's a craft that's accelerating, stopping on a dime, turning at right angles. It's metallic. It's on their radar. They're filming it. This is not a balloon. And they're caught in the middle because, they've often been, have until very recently been silenced. Flat out, you report this, you will lose your job.
Yeah, you make them look crazy, and that's all they need.
Yeah, but boy, they said they're seeing them daily. That's a big deal. Well, I'm really interested to see how our government handles this. Good luck.
Yeah, me too. So what do you know about USOs, and how many of those cases have you looked into?
Yeah, I kind of got dragged into this like I got dragged into UFOs. Because I wasn't looking for this. Let me tell you, I really wasn't. And I came into this field pretty much kicking and screaming. Like, no, fine. But yeah, from the very beginning, I started getting USO reports. I just happened to be in Southern California, in the LA area, and off the coast here, the Catalina channel, San Pedro channel, has a lot of USO, unidentified submersible objects. I mean, a lot. Mile for mile, it's one of the top producers in the world. And I started looking at other areas. I'm like, yeah, there's some on the East Coast, some off of Puerto Rico. I mean, there are areas that are pretty active, but I couldn't find any other area quite as active as this area. And kept getting reports, and I was kind of just like, okay, here's another one. And I put a chapter in my book, UFOs Over California, on USOs, ocean-going UFOs. And that got the interest of the History Channel, and they pulled me onto for their show, Deep Sea UFOs, which was really cool. And, I went on the show, brought some witnesses on, and that brought a flood of new witnesses. I ended up writing an article for Fate magazine. Is there an undersea base off the coast here? Because some of these reports are like hundreds of witnesses. And some of these reports involve hundreds of objects. A lot of objects. Something's going on here. It stretches back to like the 1920s. So I sort of built this argument that there might be a base there. And that's when I started getting a lot more reports. And so I ended up looking into it and found out that, yep, this is a hot spot. Every researcher who's in this area has cases, whether it's, Robert Stanley, Ann Druffel, Barbara Lamb, Yvonne Smith, Bill Hamilton. They all have cases. I started cataloging them, and before long I got 150 cases. I ended up writing a whole book on this. It's absolutely a hot spot. I think there probably is some sort of undersea base there. But it's not just here, it's all over the world.
What's the name of that book?
It's called Undersea UFO Base, an in-depth investigation into USOs in the Santa Catalina Channel.
Gotta put it on my list.
Yeah, I put maps in there. I pegged all the little reports. I put a map. I'm like, here's all the reports of UFOs. Here's all the ones of USOs. And boy, is it thick. It is just thick with dots.
That's awesome, man. I'm excited to read that one too. So, let me ask you this. How many people are abductees or claim to be abductees or contactees go missing?
That's a very difficult question to answer. But there is something to this. I think by and large people are returned, but how do we know if suddenly they're missing? Because there aren't a lot of people we are like, oh, this person is an abductee and now they're missing. At least not initially, but now people are catching on. There's a lot of missing people lately. This has been a hot button topic currently. Missing 411, David Paulides, Steph Young. There's a bunch of people looking into this.
Steve Stockton, I just spoke with him about it.
Yeah, this is a problem. People are disappearing, and I know of cases. There is, of course, the Frederick Valentic case in Australia, very well known. There's another case off of Lake Superior involving a Lieutenant Felix Moncla Jr., a young man. They vectored his plane into a UFO, and it merged with the blip, and the UFO took off. And poor Felix, he's gone. Never seen again. And there are a number of missing pilots. Throughout the 50s and 60s, this happened. And I was talking to a contactee. Her case is in my book, Onboard UFO Encounters. I call her Lynette. And the ETs were giving her all kinds of information. Some people don't get a whole lot of info. That ETs are often pretty tight-lipped. But they were spilling the beans to her. They told her, you must stop putting out greed and negativity. You're going to destroy your race like we did. They told her, we're going to have all kinds of upcoming disasters. They told her to stop messing around with nuclear power. They told her to tell people to stop eating meat. It's not good for you. They told her that they've been manipulating genetics for millennia, that who we thought were angels was really them. They told her that they've been manipulating the genes of dogs and cats to make them more genetically, or how did they put it, more emotionally compatible to humans. And they said, if people should start missing from your planet, it's being done by us for the greater good. So,
interesting.
Yeah. In fact, I talked to one guy I interviewed. His name is Tony. This is a really interesting case, real quick. He and his friends would hang out in their cabin up in the Palm Springs area, Southern California, high desert. Something they would do on weekends. One of their parents owned this cabin. They would just hang out there, drink beers, have fun, party. And a group of 5 or 6 of them. One of them was Paul, is his name. That's his real name. I know his last name. And Paul went missing one evening. They're like, he went to take a walk and didn't come back. And they're like, where the hell is Paul? And we're getting to the point where they're going to go out looking for him when he comes back. And he's all flushed and excited. And he's like, man, guys, you're not going to believe what happened. I came upon a landed UFO. And they're like, shut up. You're shit. You're lying to us. Sorry.
Yeah. No, you're good. You're good.
But that's what they said. I mean, these are, young men. 18, 19, 20, 21, that age, 22, thereabouts. And he's like, no, for real. This is what happened. And the guy interviewed, Tony was there. He knows Paul. He's like, knows Paul's not a joking type. And Tony believes in UFOs. He's had, some paranormal experiences himself. So he's like, what happened? Tell us what happened. And Paul tells this incredible story where he came upon a landed UFO, walked up to it. There were humanoid figures walking around it, human looking largely, but, bald, white skin, large dark eyes, not quite grays, maybe hybrids, hard to say, but could have passed for human, he said, if they wanted to, with sunglasses and a hat, and maybe some skin lotion or something, because they were very pale. But they were very friendly, he said, and they invited him on board the craft. And said it was very clean, all white. They wore white jumpsuits. They talked. They said, oh, yeah, we're studying this area. We're studying the wildlife in this area. And that's why we're here. And he's like, wow, that's amazing. And it was a pretty short visit. And they're like, if you want, you can come with us. If you want to come with us, you won't be able to come back, though. And he's like, whoa, no, I don't think so. But thanks for the invite. And they're like, that's fine. But if you change your mind, we will be back here next year at this exact time, on this date. And if you want to come and meet us again, we'll be here. And the invitation stands. And this is the story he told. And some of the guys are like, yeah, right. But he was totally serious. And long story short, a year goes by and Paul, starts giving away his stuff. Starts, I don't know if he was employed or if he quit his job, but he starts giving away his stuff. And Tony comes up to him and is like, why are you doing this? Are you going to go up there? He's like, yeah, I thought I would go and see at least if they're there. Maybe I'll get to meet him again. And Tony's like, well, are you going to go with them? And Paul's like, I don't know. I can't tell you. And he drives up there alone and doesn't come back. And so after like 2-3 days, Paul's friends, including Tony, and they alerted his parents too. And they all go up there, and there's Paul's car. The keys are in it. Paul is not there. They never saw him again. Called the police. Police are like, what happened? And Tony and his friends are like, well, this is what happened to Paul. I mean, he said he saw a UFO. And that's where the story ended. I mean, he's a missing person.
Wow. Do you think that a lot of those mysterious disappearances type things in the woods, do you think that they're somehow connected to this as well?
I have to wonder. I have to wonder about it. There's that book out now, Devil's Den by Terry Lovelace, where he had an encounter in this national park area, and there were some missing persons there. And there are a lot of cases with some very, they're there and then they're gone. And because can you attribute this to bears or someone falling off a cliff or getting lost and, wandering away? Some, probably. But perhaps some are being trafficked, by not nice people. But I don't know if that really accounts for it, because these are not the kind of person you would use for, sex trafficking. Often, usually it would be a youngster. But I don't.
On top of that, they go missing so fast. It's like, I don't know. If it was an animal attack, a lot of those, then there would be signs of that.
People are trying to attribute it to Bigfoot kidnapping. Reptilians eating them for lunch. I don't know. I think there's probably a variety of reasons for some of these, but some of them I think are being pulled on to. Yeah, I think. I hate to speculate, but I sure do wonder. I think it could be UFOs. Yeah.
I mean, there's lots of weird cases of even people that afterwards, when they've been found, say they've been found dead later, there's always mysterious circumstances with that too. Like Their clothes are on backwards. One guy was found 20 feet up in a tree. I mean, it's like, how did that happen? He wasn't hunting. He wasn't doing anything. I believe he was a jogger. You know, like, how does that happen?
Yeah.
It's just,
Yeah.
it blows my mind.
Yeah, there was one case up in Pennsylvania. Todd Seas went missing.
Yes.
And people in the area saw a UFO. And they called the police. They called, they searched the area. They combed it thoroughly. And they found him in an area that had already been searched. And it was like 3 days later or something. Poor guy was not alive.
Seems to happen a lot. Where they find them in areas that they've already searched.
Yeah, I know Leonard Stringfield, who you may have heard of. He's a very famous investigator. Mostly known for UFO crash retrievals. But worked on a case in Hobbs, New Mexico, where a farmer drove up in his pickup truck, screeched into the driveway. There was a UFO right over his truck, and he's trying to get out, and his family runs onto the porch, and he's pulled up into this saucer and didn't get out of his truck. It was pulled inside with his truck. Saucer flies off, and that's the last they saw of this poor farmer. That was it.
Wow. That's incredible.
Yeah, another case from Leonard Stringfield involving a family who called one of the relatives and said that, we're going to leave on a flying saucer. One's been harassing us that we think it's going to take us, and that's the last they heard of them. A very famous singer who had an encounter. God, what was his name? Sullivan? Jim Sullivan? He had talked about this encounter, wrote a song about it, went missing. His whole family thinks he was taken.
Wow. That's crazy. It really is crazy. So what's coming up for you next? What's in the horizon for you?
Oh, I am not going to let go of this until I see the Roswell craft in a museum. To me, that's the end game of disclosure. Maybe then I'll stop, but I am working hard on this. I'm trying to call down the UFOs myself. I've had a number of encounters. I've had some communication with these guys. Full on. I know they're aware of me. I've had a number. This keeps happening. It happened just again. This has happened like 5 times. Just like one of the strongest ones. This guy in England says, my Greys came. I'm like, oh, really? He's like, yeah, I have contact with Greys, and they told me to call Preston Dennett. I'm like, wait,
wow.
what? Yeah.
You're even getting popular on their side, huh?
So, yeah, and I've had other indications that they know about me. I've had close-up sightings. So I'm kind of working on that on a personal level, but working on a new book with a lady who's a full-on conscious contactee since age 14. She had some missing time incidents before that, some face-to-face contact. Had an abduction experience at age 14 that she's put back, didn't remember it quite at first, but spontaneously remembered the next day. And that's it. If you guys are taking me again, you better let me remember. And they did. And she's been taken regularly ever since, and still being taken.
That sounds interesting.
And it's quite a story, let me tell you.
Well, when you get that done, we'll have to have you back on so that we can talk about it.
Yeah, you got it. I can't wait. I've just about finished the interviews. We've become best friends, honestly. I mean,
that's
she
good.
showed me the UFO. She's proved her case to me. She came into my house in an out-of-body state. It was a full-color apparition, more than once. I'm like, holy crap! Oh my god!
That's crazy.
It woke me up, filled the room with light. I'm like, Dolly, oh my god! Yeah. She's for real.
That's interesting.
She is absolutely for real. Proved her abilities to me on numerous occasions.
Wow, that sounds like it's going to be an interesting read for sure.
Yeah, I'm excited.
So, what's going to happen if full disclosure happens? And there's nothing left for you to do then, man. What are you going to move on to?
I'm going to celebrate and retire. No, I don't know. I don't know what I'm going to do. Because probably move on to like writing about out-of-body experiences and, spirituality. And I don't know. we'll see. I think they'll probably. I don't know if this is ever going to end, because once they come, that's going to be an interesting story too. Once disclosure happens.
Yeah, that's true.
And I think disclosure will happen. I mean, you say if, I'm going to say when, because the cat's out of the bag. There's just no way you can backtrack this. There's no more backpedaling. Sorry. There's too many government whistleblowers out there. I've talked to a number of them myself, pretty high-level guys. I talked to an electrician's mate on the USS Clamagore, an officer on the USS Long Beach, a submarine navigator. Talked to some really cool guys, and they're like spilling the beans. Talked to a guy who was a subcontractor for the military and saw a reverse engineered UFO at Edwards. Called me on his deathbed. I'm like, oh my God, this is heavy duty. This is a big responsibility. This is stuff that needs to get out. Disclosure will happen. Whether these guys are trying to cover it up, do it willingly or not, it will happen. And also, I think on the heels of that, or even before, we're going to have open official contact. And I cannot see any of this going on another 30 years, 20 years even, or even 5. I mean, we're at a tipping point. I think they will show themselves in a way that's absolutely undeniable and indisputable. Probably sooner than most people think, but very difficult to speculate and get a timeline on this, but it's coming.
Yeah, I agree with you too. I agree with you on that for sure.
Yeah, I can't wait.
So
I am looking forward to it. Yeah, put me out of a job, please. I would love that.
Just give you more to talk about. That's what it's going to do for me.
Yeah, I think so.
So where can someone contact you if they have an experience or something that they want to get out there, get to you? How do they do that?
Yeah, I'm actually not hard to get a hold of, and I'm pretty responsive. A lot of researchers don't respond, but I do. I will. If you send me an email, I will respond to you, unless for some reason it gets lost or buried or doesn't make it to me. But I do have a website. You just sort of use the search engine on my name. It should take you there. The actual address is prestondennett.weebly.com. That's 2 N's, 2 T's. And got all my books on there, excerpts. If you have a story they want to share, a question, or just even a comment, I always love hearing from people. My books are on Amazon and other online retailers. On Facebook, you can reach me there. I'm on Twitter. Recently, I'm still kind of learning Twitter. And
yeah, it's tough, isn't it?
All these social media platforms are moving faster than I can. But I got a YouTube channel as well, putting out my research for people who don't want to read a book. This is an important subject. This is going to change the world. You may not think it's important, like, I've never seen a UFO, what do I care? I'm like, wake up. This is affecting your life for sure. You're a wage slave. Why? We don't need to have this unequal distribution of wealth. We don't need to have this greed choking our country. All this divisiveness, it's ridiculous. We are all one. The ETs are all about this. We need to start guiding our actions on love and truth and knowledge and facts, and stop buying into the delusion and the fear and the ET threat narrative, which it's not. They're not a threat. They are here to help us, to wake us up, to teach us. And that's going to become apparent really soon, I think. So it's time. Yeah, the ETs really want people to wake up to their own psychic abilities. We need to become telepathic. We need to start using our intuition. This is a big, big deal. Because when we start doing that, corruption will fall by the wayside. And that's a big, big problem in society right now, is the corruption of our leaders. And that can't go on, and I don't think it will.
I agree with that 100%. Well, I'll tell you what, I'm going to put all your links in the show notes. So that way anybody that wants to check out your YouTube channel, your website, I'm going to put the links to all your books in there, because You've got some good ones on there that I can't wait to read. So I'll throw that in the show, and I sure would love to have you on again sometime in the future.
Hey, you got it. You know, I love talking about this stuff. I can't stop. Don't get me started.
I'm the same way, man. I love listening to it. So heck yeah. So, all right. Well, Preston, I really appreciate you coming on to the show, and look forward to talking to you again.
Hey, you got it. Yeah. Thanks for having me on. It's been a blast.
Well, that about does it for Dreamland tonight, dreamers. Thanks again for listening, and good night.